Hi guys, it's Michael from Amateur Vintage Electronics. I'm back. I took a break after really busy Macintosh. I created a lot of videos during that time, so if you haven't watched them, please go to my channel and also please subscribe. Today I will do an in-depth video about the Macintosh Plus, which is the one you see right here. Now before I start, I will explain to you how or what you will see inside in this video. First, I will give you some very basic information, a little bit about the history of the computer. Then I will show you the different versions that exist of the Macintosh Plus. I'll also show you the different accessories that came with the computer. And after that, I'll take one, dismantle it completely in order to create an exploded view for you. So you can see each and every single part that is inside the Mac Plus. I'll try to go into as much detail as possible. So this video could really be great for you if you just start working on a Mac Plus yourself, or if you're just interested in the computer as such and have never seen one before from the inside. That said, let's get started. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, just go to the video description below and click on the section you want to watch. I will cut it into sections for you. The history. The Macintosh Plus it turned 35 years old this year, so it came out on January 16, 1986. It was the second longest produced and sold Macintosh computer of all times. Only the Mac Pro, the second version in the 2010s, was sold for a longer period of time, but I'd say the Mac Pro doesn't qualify as an average consumer product. So in that sense, I'd say the Macintosh Plus is the longest running Apple consumer computer of all times. It did cost $2,600 US though back in the days, so it was not as affordable as you would think. It was still used by many households, students, scholars who wrote their papers and the master's thesis on these machines. So it was among the first personal computers which was not used uniquely in businesses and in companies. Why do I love the Macintosh Plus so much? Because it has a lot of firsts and at the same time a lot of lasts. Regarding the firsts, it was the first Macintosh computer or Apple computer with 1 megabyte of RAM, which is nothing special per se, but at the same time its RAM was upgradable by the user. So it was the first computer with SIM sockets, so you could easily swap, replace and upgrade the RAM yourself, which was not common during that time. Then it was the first computer that had SCSI support. Now SCSI on a Macintosh Plus is nothing special or nothing fancy. The implementation was really buggy, so it doesn't work as good as you would expect. Still, it was the first computer introducing this port at all. It was the first Macintosh with an 800K floppy drive. Before that, they had 400K drives, and after that, with the Macintosh SE, they introduced the high density drive with 1.4 megabyte. So in that sense, it was also the last one using only the 800K floppy drive. And it was the first computer that Apple introduced the hierarchical file system, the HFS, with. So you could create folders and layer your documents properly. Regarding lasts, it was the last Mac using several ports, like the RG4 connector, which we have in front here, the one that very often got mixed up with a telephone cord connector. For the keyboard, it was the last Macintosh or Apple computer using the DE9 pin connector for the mouse, which was also used in the Apple II or in the Lisa computers. It was the last Mac without an internal hard drive. So also the Macintosh SE after that introduced internal hard drives. And the point I like the most, it was the last Macintosh computer in the original case design. And that's, like I said, my main point, because I really love this classic Mac design, like you can see when you watch the video where Steve Jobs introduced the Macintosh as such. That said, I will now turn to the different versions of the Macintosh Plus that are out there. Now, case-wise, we have 4 different versions of the Macintosh Plus. This one here is the first version that came out in 1986. It's yellowed, I haven't cleaned it yet, but it's just to show you. This is the beige Macintosh Plus. So you could tell by the color which version it is. Then there is another Macintosh Plus, which you can see here. Just ignore the imprint here. I guess some university marked their properties like that. This was actually a Macintosh 512K, because you can tell this by the serial number you can see down here. And you can see this Mac actually has 2 serial numbers. The reason for that is Apple also sold an upgrade kit back then, which included the back case, the logic board inside, and the 800K floppy drive in order to upgrade 128K and 512K Macintosh models. The joke is that this upgrade kit was as expensive as a new computer, so you could just go and buy a new Mac Plus anyway. But if you ever see a Macintosh Plus with the old front panel, you know now why, and that this actually is a proper Macintosh Plus, which just has been upgraded from a Macintosh 512 or Macintosh 128K computer. Then was the Platinum Macintosh Plus, which was the main model and the longest running model. This was introduced in 1987, so the color as such. The Platinum Macintosh Plus had 2 versions. I do not have the 4th version here. It's not the Rainbow Mac, which I created myself, but the Macintosh a bit later was, I'll try to show you here. You can see it on the label. It says Macintosh Plus 1 megabyte, and later they only labeled it with Macintosh Plus because Apple also shipped it with 2 megabytes or 4 megabytes of RAM. Now we'll go over to the accessories, and I'm going to start with the mouse. As you see, just like with the case, there were 2 different versions, the beige one and the platinum one. This beige mouse is actually manufactured in the USA. The platinum one is made in Japan. It doesn't automatically mean that all beige mice are from the USA, because they shifted production to Japan and then changed the color. So only the earlier ones are actually made in the US. This was the same mouse that could also be used on the Lisa computer or the Apple II models. Now there are 2 accessories I'd like to mention which were not uniquely Macintosh Plus accessories, but nonetheless they were used very common together with the Macintosh Plus. This was the first Macintosh keyboard that shipped with the 128K and 512K models, and you will see these a lot together with the upgraded Macintosh Plus version. This is also beige in color, and as you see, this is made in Ireland and has the German layout. And then there was the 400K external floppy drive, which also came out with the earlier Macintosh models. This one, I guess, is made in Japan, as you can see, and has the beige coloring. What you can see here is the keyboard that actually came out with the Macintosh Plus. This now here is the platinum version of the Macintosh Plus keyboard. As you see, this is made in Japan, and the innovation with that was that it included the numeric keys and also the cursor keys, which didn't exist in the Macintosh keyboard before. Now, there are also several versions of this keyboard. The very first one was also beige in color, and as you see, made in the US. This was, I'll show you like that. You can tell them apart by the light green board, and that's the one I'm working on. So yeah, it doesn't have all the keys on it, but it has the also beige colored Alps key stems. That's how you could tell it apart from a Japanese version, which I'm going to show you also. Now again, beige, but made in Japan. As you see, this board is dark green, and it has the white key stems, which are the, you can see it here, the Mitsumi key stems. So this is the Japanese Mitsumi version of the Macintosh Plus keyboard. Lastly, we have two more accessories I'd like to mention. One is the external hard disk 20SC. This was the first external hard disk by Apple with a SCSI connector. Before that, there was the hard disk 20, which connected through the floppy port, so it was horribly slow. So this was the first external SCSI hard drive. They used the same case, but with 40 SC and I think 80 SC as well. So 20 megabyte, 40 megabyte, and 80 megabyte later on. And over here we have the Apple 3.5 inch drive. Just get that out of the way. Which was the external 800K floppy drive. Now they rebranded it, as you can see here, they rebranded it Apple, because this one could also be used with the Lisa computer and the Apple II as well. So it was not purely a Macintosh accessory. It includes the same floppy drive that is inside the Macintosh Plus, so you're going to see it later on. So I guess we've covered all the basics and the accessories. Now I'm going to take this Platinum Macintosh Plus. Like I said in the beginning, I will dismantle it completely in order to create an exploded view for you. Let's go. First things first, before dismantling the Macintosh, I will explain to you a bit what's going on in the outside of the case. So obviously in front we have the floppy drive, which can be used to insert floppy disks, obviously. In case you ever wondered what this little hole is for, you can just use a paper clip to manually eject stuck disks, just like that. Then also on the front we have the RG4 connector for the keyboard, and below here we have a little wheel you can turn for the brightness control of the CRT screen. Now when I turn it sideways, here we have the programmer switches to interrupt and reset the computer and to enter an area where you can actually program something. I've never done it before because I'm an amateur and I have no idea what's going on there. Then on the back side we have here the slit for the Macintosh security lock, which was used to keep it in place, especially at universities or public places. Then up here we have the battery compartment. In case you see corrosion here, or if you have a Mac Plus where there is even a battery inside, remove it immediately. This is one of the most common problem areas of these machines, that people forget to remove the battery. The battery starts leaking after a certain time, and then it causes serious damage inside this area. The on-off switch, very basic, the power connector, and below here there is a connector for speakers. It has one built-in speaker, but obviously you can connect others as well. Here is the D9 mouse connector I talked about. Then we have the external floppy port where you can plug in external floppy disk drives, or in hard disk 20, like I explained to you already. This was connected with this port rather than the SCSI port, which can be used for the hard disk 20 SC or other external interfaces. But like I said, with the Macintosh Plus, the SCSI support is a little buggy. Then we have the connector for the printer, and there where this is this little phone sign, you can actually connect it to an Apple Talk network or early versions of the internet. Now, that said, I already removed the battery compartment door, which is the first part of the exploded view we're going to generate. The second thing I'm going to remove will be the programmer switch I already talked about. People forget this a lot, because if you don't remove it, it's just a plastic piece that connects to the logic board, to buttons, actual buttons on the logic board. If you forget to remove this before removing the case, then you'll probably break this part. And now let's open up the case. So we have on the back 5 screws, 2 of which are already removed. These are below here. I hope you can see this. I will show you the tool you will need for that. It's this TX15 long screwdriver, which goes in all the way up here. Like I said, I already removed the screws, so we won't be needing this. And the rest of the screws you can just remove with a regular TX15. I'm using this bit here. And there is one here in the battery compartment door, and 2 below here. We're going to put these screws aside, and now I'm putting the Mac face down. As you see, I'm wearing a rubber mat in order to not harm the screen or the front panel, and just pull it off, and the Mac is open. Now inside the case you see the signatures, and there is also this little piece of metal. You don't need to remove it, just know it's there. I guess it's to ground the battery compartment, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to manually discharge the CRT screen. For that, I'm going to zoom in a bit. As you see, there is this CRT screen right in the middle. And what it does is it stores electricity. Back in the days, they didn't have these transformers that could bleed themselves out, and that's why you need to manually discharge it. And I'm going to explain to you how that goes. You just use a basic screwdriver with some wire attached, and then you see I loosened up this screw here, which is the ground wire for the CRT screen, and I am going to attach cable, and then with the screwdriver attached I will try to get below this anode cap to actually discharge it. Now it's a bit tricky because you're supposed to use only one hand in order to not electrify yourselves. Alright, and I'm touching the metal pins that are inside here. Sometimes you even see a spark or hear a soft pop. But I guess that should be it. And then you can remove this discharge tool, as you won't be needing this anymore. And just removing the anode cap. Now this is a clamp which goes outwards. So when you remove it, you need to push it to one side first and then to the other. It's very basic. Below here is a protective shield for the logic board, which we can also remove already. And before we actually can remove the logic board, we need to disconnect it. So I am going to disconnect the floppy cable, which goes to the logic board. I hope you can see this. Zooming out a bit. Okay. You can basically disconnect it completely already. Now there are several versions of this floppy cable with the Mac Plus. The usual one is the yellow ribbon cable, and the Macintosh SE has a red ribbon cable. I think I read about this once, that basically determines the priority with which the logic board will steer its devices. So with the yellow ribbon cable, it will always go first for the floppy drive to check for a system disk there. With the red ribbon cable, it will first go to the SCSI port, because the SE has an internal hard drive, and then to the floppy drive. So if you have an SE that has an internal hard drive but asks for the floppy, then you can probably say that the hard disk is broken. The second thing I'm going to remove on the analog board is the power connector, which is this. And then you can remove the logic board itself. Like I already explained to you, I will talk about each and every part individually as well. But first I'm going to remove everything. Now, what we need now is a regular screwdriver, like this. You can see it. In order to remove the floppy drive, which has 4 screws, which are here. And number 4. And now you can basically take out the floppy drive, including its case. Now to remove the drive from the case, you again have 4 screws, which are here on the sides. Right, and with that removed, you can just take out the floppy drive out of its compartment. Next part. Oops. It's not supposed to happen. Next part will be removing the analog board, the power supply, and for that we actually need to turn it the other way. As you see, it has a protective shield here. Now I am not removing the protective shield because we don't need to go below here to see the solder joints, because we're not gonna fix anything there. But if you want to remove it, you basically just pop these little pins open. If this has never been opened before, then it's probably glued on there with some double-sided sticky yellow thing, which is really tough to remove. So be careful when you encounter such an analog board. As you see, I'm removing screws. We have 2 over here, 1 down here, and then there is this one up here, which is grounding the analog board or the power supply. And that's about it. Now, before we can take it out, we need to disconnect the CRT screen. Now, there are two ways to do that. You can either remove this part here, or you can disconnect this cable here. I prefer disconnecting the cable because I do not want to touch this glass tube, because if you break it, the screen is gone. So I am removing this cable. And there is also another 4-pin cable which is below here, which is also easily disconnected. And then you can just take out the power supply, which you have here. Oops. Let's put this over here. Alright. Couple screws to go. Let's remove the CRT screen. It has 4 screws. One I've already shown you is grounding the screen itself. And then there are 2 more below here. These are again TX15 screws. Okay, then you can basically take the CRT tube out. Almost done. There is still this case part, which also has 5 screws, I think. Tube a bit. 2 more here. One. And 2. And then you can take out the last part of the case. Now let me put this in a smart exploded view here on the board to see, and I'll be right back. Alright, here we have it. This is the exploded view. I am showing you an image of the bird's eye perspective. I think it looks rather nice to see how much is actually inside a Macintosh Plus. Now let me explain the parts I haven't explained yet. I'm just briefly going through. I think there is no need to talk anymore about the back casing. Only thing I haven't mentioned is that the serial number is here below. I will show you up close a bit. So yeah, you have the serial number of the Mac Plus. With the Macintosh 128K or the Macintosh 512K, the serial number is actually hidden below here. Then we have this case part, the last part I took out. As you see, there is a time and date stamp. This was obviously manufactured on the 26th April in 1989. This is one of the main parts that holds the case for the floppy drive. Then it holds the logic board with these slits here, and yeah, it basically keeps the whole case together. Then I've already talked about the shield of the logic board, so I will not go into much detail on that. Here we have the carrier for the floppy drive. We've removed it. This is also a part that doesn't need any further explanation. The same applies to the screws and the floppy cable, and also the battery door and the programmer switch, which are already explained. Which brings me to the 4 main components of the Macintosh Plus, which are the CRT screen, the analog board, the logic board, and the floppy drive itself. I guess we'll start with the floppy drive because it's the simplest one. Here we have it. Basically, there is the closure mechanism, which is this one here. As you see, when it closes, the head, which reads and writes the floppy disks, goes down. Here we have this metal plate that we also used to manually eject a floppy disk. So this is what we actually pressured with the paperclip. When you push here, just push this inward and the floppy drive opens. This part here is the ejector itself. So when the computer gives an electrical sign to this to eject it, this will activate the eject mechanism. Then here we have the motor, which I hope you can see this if I go a bit closer. So this rotates and moves the head back and forth. This is actually the most important part. And of course there are some sensors here to give the motor the indication on which position he currently is. Down here is the board side, the solder side of the floppy disk drive. As you can see, these are manufactured by Sony, and this now here is an 800K disk drive. The 400K disk drives look a lot different. They are much larger, much more complicated to repair, but fortunately the Mac Plus uses already the 800K drives. Now the CRT tube itself, I've already talked about that, but just to show you, this is it. Again, we have to be very careful with this glass tube, because if it breaks, you will release a vacuum from the screen and the screen is basically irreparably damaged. There is not much to say about the screen itself. There is nothing special about it. Then let's go over to the logic board first, because it's easier to explain. I've already shown you the different ports from the outside. This is how it looks from the inside. Here went the floppy cable that goes to the internal floppy drive. Then also to show you this, these are the two programmer switches I've mentioned. So this plastic piece is touching these two buttons, and that's how it reaches them and has any effect. Here is the main part, which is the processor and the corresponding ROMs for the computer. And here we have the SIM sockets with the RAMs. As you probably can tell, this has been upgraded to 4 MB of RAMs already. Originally the Mac Plus ships with 1 MB of RAM, so 4 times 256K. In case you're looking for problem areas, it's mostly, if the problem is with the logic board, it's mostly these SIMs, the RAMs, or the ROMs themselves. If you upgrade them, there is a little resistor. Try to go a bit closer. You can see this. Now this resistor has to be properly placed depending on which RAMs are installed. So if there is only 1 MB of RAM in total installed, so 4 times 256, then the resistor needs to be closed here with the 256 in order for the board to work properly. If there is only one row of RAMs, the resistor has to be moved down here. One row means only the first two here and no RAMs here. And if it's upgraded, like here, to 4 MB or any other configurations with which mixes different RAM sizes, then the resistor has to go out completely. As you see, this has been solved not by me, by just cutting the resistor off. Then, there is the power connector, and this is also a problematic part. These are the solder pins for the power connector. Very rarely, but it happens that they get small cracks, and that leads to issues with the computer. So when looking for trouble, you can always check those as well. Of course, there are a magnitude of other potential problem areas, but in the most important ones I've covered already. Now, the power supply, the analog board. This is the most problematic thing of the Macintosh Plus, or any Macintosh computer for that matter. There are all these capacitors which are electrolytic and which starts leaking after a fair amount of time and of usage. Now there are those, let me also go a bit closer to show you better. Now there will be those people to tell you always recap everything when you get a Macintosh like that. I'm not a fan of this particular approach because I like to keep things as original as possible, and also if you're not 100% into electronics or not a specialist on that field, then on the solder side, which is below here, I'll show you, which is below here, you can do more harm than good if you try to remove parts that are not broken already. So in other words, if you see these capacitors here are bloated or obviously leaking or damaged in any way, then of course, yes, it needs to be recapped and they should be replaced. But if they are fine and if the computer works, I personally am not a fan of recapping the whole board just as a precautionary measure. If it starts leaking after a certain time and if the computer stops working, you can go back anytime and replace the caps anyway. So I rather keep it as original as possible. The most common problematic areas are up here, which is the video section. This is the C1 capacitor and the C2. These two are the main problems if your screen only shows one stripe in either direction, then you should look for those two. Then we have the two transformers, which are these parts here. If they break, then unfortunately you can throw out the whole board because these cannot be replaced. So there are no modern replacement parts for that. So when you have a non-working Mac, just always hope that it's not these two transformers here. The next problematic area is the RD resistors down here in the power supply section on the international analog board. This is the international one. There is a US version which is slightly different. So these resistors may look different if you're based in the US. But if they get over voltage and if they break, then sometimes the Mac does absolutely nothing. For me, once the Mac went dark, when I turned it on, nothing happened, and I only removed this resistor and replaced it, and it worked again. So it can be very simple when you have a problem with your power supply. Larry Pina, who wrote the book Macintosh Repair and Upgrade Secrets, also always says, go with the obvious. So if you see something that looks out of place, that doesn't look fine, then you're usually on the right track. All right. Regarding the analog board, you maybe also to explain, you see these little things you can turn. These you actually turn from the other side, and this, as you see, is to control brightness, the height, and the voltage, and the focus of the screen. So with these controls you can go without dismantling it. You take a very small screwdriver, a flat one, and you can adjust your screen. Here we have the internal speaker, and that was basically it. So what I will do now is I will take all these parts, put the Mac back together, and then we see if it works. Alright, now let's see if we have put back everything together as it should. Alright, the bong is already a good sign. Screen comes up also. Now this particular model takes a while, quite familiar with it already, so there is no need to be alarmed. Let's just hope that it will ask us for the boot disk soon. Ah, there we go. Inserting disk. And the system is loading. Welcome to Macintosh. I hope you liked this video. I hope it was a bit of help in case you just start working on your Mac, or I hope it brought you some insight on the inside of this Macintosh Plus model. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, watch my other videos. In case you're interested in the software or in system versions, I've already uploaded some demos about them. And stay tuned for more. Have a great day. Take care. Cheers.